Howdy, y'all, and welcome back to Sacred Axis, a space for the whimsically divine. I'm Chesten.
And I am Christina. And welcome, everybody. So today I wanted to bring the topic of joy versus happiness. So living a more centered, more joyful life. Leaning into what we all seek, and yet we often misunderstand, and that is the difference between the two, the difference between happiness and joy. So that's kind of where the topic is based on today. And so we spend so much of our lives chasing happiness, that next big thing, that next job, that next promotion, the next perfect relationship, the next whatever it is. But joy asks something different of us. And the joy invites us to not chase. Joy is that steady hum, that steady being beneath all of the experiences. And it's that knowing that where you are, it's enough. So when we're feeling that space of joy is where we're feeling enoughness. So it kind of goes on a little bit of topic that we had before. But so I want to speak on those spaces in between doing and being, and between the fleeting happiness and the lasting joy. So the doing is the happiness. The being is that lasting joy. It's everlasting. So what happiness? What is happiness? If we had to define it. And I kind of broke it down as happiness is beautiful, but it's fleeting. It's a visitor. It's not a resident. It's not permanent. It's fleeting. It comes and goes. So when we get that job promotion, we're like, yay. And 2 days later, we're in that position. And by the end of the week, we're like, all right, what's next? See, that happiness kind of left. Now we're looking for that next bit. And happiness is conditional. It rises and falls with all of our experiences, whatever that is. It rises and falls. And happiness shows up when things align, when life feels easy, when love returns our call, when we're standing in sunlight. Like that's that happiness. Because when love returns our call, that's that fleeting moment. That's that moment. Then that will, it just, what do you say, fizzles away. So going back on happiness. So happiness depends on something happening, something happening. And it's that reaction, and it's that mirror reflecting the outer world. It's the outer layers of emotion, and that is vibrant, temporary, and it's human. There's nothing wrong with that happiness. We all feel those bursts of that, and it brings us those dopamine spikes. It teaches us presence and teaches gratitude, and it teaches us appreciation. But if we attach our peace to it, that's when we begin to live in that constant pursuit of happiness, that seeking, that striving, that always reaching for something. It fades just as quickly as it arrives. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the tricky part is when we rely on it. We rely on that happiness. We begin to chase that. I've felt that a lot in my life. There were moments where I thought I was happy, but I was chasing that next thing. And once I've accomplished one thing, then I'm like, okay, now what? I don't feel that happiness. So now I'm chasing something else. In metaphysical terms, and how I feel this is happiness belongs to the ego self, and the self that identifies with doing, identifies with that achieving and the becoming something. It's that light that depends on that external factor, that external source. So happiness feels like, and it makes us feel lifted. We love, when we get a surprise card in the mail, that was that happiness. That was that fleeting happiness. We got that. Makes us feel good. But then again, like that fades away. It fades. So, and that leaves us hungry for more. In its nature, happiness is temporary. It's not that it's a good or bad thing. It's just temporary. It's meant to remind us how sweet life is and not define that happiness for our worth, because that's that fleeting. So that's where, when we come to joy. So what is joy? And for me, joy is something totally different. Joy doesn't need a reason. It doesn't depend on how our life is, on that weather of our life, how we're feeling. Joy is not an emotion. It's an energy. It's a frequency. It's presence. It's being present. It's that energetic state of just being. And where happiness is a reaction, joy is a recognition. So joy arises from that soul, from alignment from truth. It can coexist. And this is the part that we can talk a little bit about, but you wouldn't think that joy could coexist with sadness or pain or even with loss, but it can, because you can feel joy while grieving, and you can feel joy in that stillness, in that silence, in that space between our thoughts. And because joy is not about what is happening to you, it's about who you are while it's happening. It's about that what is, like who we are in that space. And the feelings of joy arises from being in alignment and just being. It's when our inner world is in harmony with truth, with our truth. So it's that steady, luminous, it's present. It's just us being present in the space. And even in the middle of sorrow or uncertainty, it's just knowing that we're being present in that space with where we are. Joy is about awakening to life, the breath. It's the pulse. It's the awareness itself. It's that soul's recognition to recognizing that itself is in everything. And you've probably felt that, those small moments, those sacred moments where your heart felt still. And that could be watching a sunrise after a long night of work, when the beautiful colors, and holding someone's hand in just silence, hearing your own laughter, and in the midst of something chaotic or sorrow, just hearing your own laughter. That is still joy, because you're present with it. You're present with yourself. So joy feels like that still water. It's calming. It goes deep. It's very radiant. And joy doesn't need anything. It doesn't shout. It just simply is. So how do they feel different? It's in a balanced life. Going back to the very beginning, where happiness visits, where joy remains. Like with me, you know how some years, I don't know if you've done this, Chesten, but like you'll pick January 1st, you'll pick a word for the year. So I did that, I think a couple years ago, because I felt lost. And I picked the word joy because I lost joy in life. It almost wasn't in my vocabulary anymore, because I feel like, was I happy? Absolutely. I was happy, but it was still hard times. But those hard times, I had a burst of some happiness come in, but that happiness went away. There was no underlying layer of joy. And that was lack of joy in almost everything I did. That was music, my job, just, I felt, when there wasn't those bursts of happiness, I felt numb. So that was my word. And for the year, it took probably 6 to 8 months for me to actually feel joy again. For me to get into that space of joy, I had to really reframe my thought process, retrain my brain, and what the difference was between that happiness and joy, and what the definition for joy was for me, and how do I build that back. And that took a lot. I took time in nature a lot. I walked in just silence and just being, like that joy of just looking at a beautiful leaf, like that feeling still lays within me. If I see something beautiful, it's not fleeting. It doesn't go away. It's just residing in me, because I stopped and I paused in that stillness and admired that. So that was that joy. I had to bring that back in, and also try and incorporate joy back into my creative processes. Like with music, like the joy wasn't here because I was always chasing something with it. I put expectations on happiness. In order for me to be happy, this is the expectation I set, where joy did not even, like I said, it was not even in my dictionary. It wasn't even Christina's dictionary. So I can now feel that joy. And everything I do is because of the weight I put on it and how I viewed what joy and happiness was. Where I know happiness can still come. I'm not expecting that dopamine push or to create settled joy, settledness in me, if that makes sense. So that took a minute to figure out, because I'm like, what is joy? Like even around the holidays, I kept seeing signs of joy, like what is it? So I guess if you feel like you're in that space, or is it just really, I think joy says just to go within and look for that stillness, and always know that it resides at all times. And like, I feel that now with everything, like it's always here. I'm always feeling joy.
Well, can I have some questions with it?
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. So, because from what I'm understanding, happiness would be considered a feeling, that it's temporary, and that it more deals with how we feel after an accomplishment or doing an activity, that there's some type of reward system, or we feel that type of thing. Is that fair to say?
Yep. Yep. That is.
Okay, so my question with that is, do you feel like we have unfair expectations on happiness, and that's why we struggle so much with it and our relationships with it? Like you were saying, it's a feeling, and feelings are meant to be fleeting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, fear is meant to be you feel afraid and then you don't feel afraid. Or anger, it's meant to be you feel angry and now you don't feel angry. And it sounds like for happiness that we're unfairly expecting a feeling to always be there when it's not meant to be. Is that
Yes.
fair to say?
I feel like we get stuck in that trap of our own expectations of creating that we feel like happiness is everlasting.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
oh, miss, book this great vacation. We're gonna go on a cruise. So excited, and then you go on the cruise, and then you're back, and then you're like,
Well,
oh,
and do you feel like if we fairly categorized happiness, like, yes, like you were saying earlier, like happiness is still important, and also allowing happiness to be what it is, that it's a feeling and it comes and goes, and that's what it's meant to do? Do you feel like if we acknowledge that about happiness, that we would have a healthier relationship with it, and then we wouldn't rely so much in chasing it?
hmm. I think if we did reframe it in our mind of what happiness is and what it's meant to do, I think that would just bring so much more peace and calm to everything that we did.
Yeah. And I
Everything,
want
like even relationships, even with anything. 'Cause it's
Mhm.
like, if we put expectations on ourselves, if we're able to do that for ourselves, we know we're able to put expectations on anybody else, like a relationship. If you don't have that proper mindset of like, you're gonna make me happy by doing this, or having that setting that expectation that this relationship, I'm gonna be happy 24/7. Like, that's an
Yeah.
unrealistic expectation and unfair.
True. Well, yeah, because it's that I agree with you with that, because I do like the quote that love is unconditional, but relationships are conditional.
Mhm.
But like you said, the conditions need to be fair. It's very different to have expectations of, romantic friendships, any of it, that will treat each other with basic human decency. That should be an expectation. But like you were saying, I expect my partner to make me happy 24/7 is an unfair expectation.
And then that's that. And I think if they categorize that as in a happiness bracket, like how
Mhm.
many in anything that we do, relationships, jobs, or whatever, are we bringing joy in to the equation? We don't. We just go for that happiness. It's either this or that. It's either happy, angry, or upset. But once we start bringing that joy in, kind of like when I was talking about joy a little bit, it's just like joy is those silent times
Mhm.
by just being in that sitting in the space with your partner and holding their hand. There's no expectations. It's just complete joy. It's not happy. It's just complete joy. Like, it's almost being present in that moment.
Well,
Yeah.
do you think that experiencing joy like that can make space for more happiness to come? Especially because it sounds like two things are happening simultaneously with joy versus happiness. Is you have that there's also joy. It sounds like it's more that just existing,
Hmm.
while happiness, something has to be done.
Hmm.
So if we have satisfaction in existing, or really connected with just enjoying existing, wouldn't that make a space for more opportunities to kind of feel that happiness too? Because if you're just, you know what I mean? Like, because it sounds like too, part of it is when you're explaining joy, what it made me think of was like feeling fulfilled. Like, the way that you define joy, I've heard people define that as them feeling fulfillment. in their lives. And I've heard people define it like they would use the term fulfillment instead of joy, or they would use the term reverence instead of joy, but it's the same thing that you're describing, or even like ecstasy. And it sounds like they're all describing the same thing. Like, and all of those seem to, from when you were describing what joy means to you, it sounds like allowing to exist, being recognized for who you are, being present, and connection, both connection with others and connection with self. And it sounds like a more sincere connection or an authentic connection. And it sounds like it's also kind of like the way that we experience life. Is that fair to say? Like this is what I'm getting from what you're from your definition of joy. Does that sound right?
Yeah. And going back to like how we're experiencing life,
Mhm.
like I think a lot of people experience more the expectations instead of the feeling fulfilled, just internally fulfilled without expectations. And being internally fulfilled goes back to being centered, goes back to being, goes back to seeing things as they are and admiring that, like the sunsets, the warm cup of coffee. Like that's joy.
Yeah.
That it
I
is.
definitely think that.
It is joy. It doesn't make us happy. It is. That's that piece
Well,
of joy, that fulfillment when I wake up in the morning, like that morning cup of coffee is just warm, or that hot chocolate with the marshmallows on top.
and I like what you said too when you brought up as well with joy, with you were talking about with joy, recognizing what is. Like this is the present, this is reality.
Mhm.
And when you were talking about joy and how you can feel both joy and sadness, when you mentioned the just accepting reality for what it is, it makes me think of even those not so fun times, like where, say, you realize that a friend isn't a good friend and that you're going to have to step away from it. It sounds like there can be, it sounds weird to say joy in it, but that you can still be comfortable. And maybe for that example, I'll say comfortable instead of joy, but you can
Mhm.
feel comfortable in stepping maybe a little bit further back from that friendship, even while feeling sad about it and grieving it and mourning it because you are being present with reality. Maybe they said a really crappy thing to you and you recognize, this has been a pattern and I've already talked about it to this person and they keep doing it. So I just need to step away for
Mhm.
my personal well being.
And that was a key thing, is acknowledging it. When you
Yeah.
acknowledge it, that's
Yeah.
going within, because we felt like that didn't sit right. So we acknowledge something for what it is. And when we used our our inner being, our centeredness, to see it for what it is and not put, I don't want to say an expectation on it, but we just
And
see it that it just is.
yeah, well, because I feel like that it's okay to say we have expectations. Again, like
Mhm.
we were talking about before, it's that making sure we have fair expectations for whatever it is. Having fair expectations in friendships, having fair expectations for feelings, like not being hard on our brain for not feeling happy all the time and be like, "Be happy." Yeah, no, that's an unfair expectation.
Yeah, yeah, it is, and you are right, it's having those expectations, but those are just those almost, I don't wanna say expectations that we didn't question. It's almost like these are the boundaries that we have of we want how we wanna feel. So it's like going into our internal side, inside our internal world, and just being present with that.
I like it. Well, and it sounds like too
See.
that with happiness, because I don't want to just like leave happiness feeling left out like that, but
Mhm,
maybe it's like using happiness as a cue. Because I think happiness can be used sometimes as a cue that we are headed in a right direction too. Because it's like,
mhm,
there are times where someone says something and maybe their tone, we feel a little bit afraid. It's like, we're interpreting this as this makes me feel uncomfortable. And it gives that opportunity for us to leave, explore why we feel uncomfortable. Like it gives us a chance to go deeper
mhm,
without holding on to the anger. Like it's a meant to be a temporary guide or like a temporary like, hey, like to get our attention and maybe viewing happiness that same way that if again, someone says something and we start to feel happy inside, maybe using that as an invitation of, oh, this is a pleasant experience. This is a comfortable experience. And why is that? And that's that invitation of, is it because of the person themselves? Is it because of their topic that they're talking about? Does it feel like I want to spend more time with this person? Not that they are responsible for making me happy, but that I feel comfortable with them. I feel pleasant around them. So maybe they're a good egg to hang out with, like a good
Mhm.
person to be around. Also, like allowing that part, like celebrating that it gives us that opportunity, like other feelings do. Like, but
Right.
using that, it's a temporary guide, it's just the invitation. But like you said, it's not meant to be a permanent fixture.
And yeah, and I think with that happiness, like we'll have those bursts of happiness, and they'll lead to
Mhm.
that joy.
Mhm. Yes.
It's just like going back to like a relationship, friendship. You make a new friend, or like I said, joy or like happiness, and you're like, yay. But like doing that inner work of leaving that the rest of it joy, with those
Mhm.
bursts of whatever relationship it is. Bursts of
Well,
happiness can come in, but there's still that underlying joy is
and you know what I
reconnected with
just
that. Go
what I
ahead.
just thought of with it, with the happiness versus joy. And I don't know, this may be like, if it's a terrible metaphor or a terrible example, you can just cut it out. But bringing it back to the episode 5 with the lion trackers. So properly utilized happiness is spotting the lion track. Like, yes, I found this. And then going through the process of learning the tracks and doing that stuff so that you can find the lions, that leads to that fulfillment, that joy.
Mhm.
It sounds like improperly utilized happiness is finding the lion track and be like, ah, I found it. And then making a mold of lion prints and creating lion tracks yourself. And so you're getting lost in the feeling of like, oh, I found it. Oh, I found it. But not, and creating it yourself instead of like utilizing that moment that you found it, that interest, because happiness, like with that, could be even considered like sparking of the interest, right? It's getting our attention, but utilizing that and not recreating that like that surprise happiness, like, oh, I found the track, okay, let me go like make my own prints, because then you never found the lions. We're too busy, like, just hanging out in
Chasing.
that one, like less than an acre, like, or a quarter of an acre, just putting lion prints everywhere. And the lion may be like just up in the tree somewhere looking at us like, what is wrong with this person? But we're
Mhm.
so focused on recreating that happiness, and we're recreating it in a way that we still aren't moving forward. Being aware of how we're trying to recreate happiness, I guess, or how we're trying to create happiness. Like,
Mhm.
are we utilizing the cue to encourage us to continue learning how to track down lines, being excited, happy when we find it, being excited and happy when we find the lion, and then the next day, oh, the tracks are different, like allowing that happiness to be part of our journey as we do that thing that fulfills us? Or is our sole focus on feeling the happiness, so we're so busy making the tracks ourselves that we never even get to see the lions because we're so busy trying to recreate, and then we're not even happy about it because it's like, why isn't it creating this? After a while it
Yes.
gets boring, and then we get mad. We're like, how dare you, tracks? I'm no longer happy. This sucks.
Yeah, and then you're just, like, on to something else now. What else
Right?
can what else can make me happy? It's like
Let me look
going in
for
it the
leopard
wrong
tracks
way.
now.
Yeah, it's like going in the wrong way, creating tracks yourself to just get that boost, that dopamine
Mhm.
burst.
Mhm.
But what was the end game?
Yeah,
Of course, so it
exactly.
leaves you frustrating. That I
Yeah.
think, like, when you were kind of describing it, and I was viewing in my head is like that happiness is seeing that first track, but
Mhm.
joy is revolved in that whole thing. Joy was that internal thing of like, what are we doing right now? We're
Mhm.
going out and we're trying to find a lion track, and like being present with that and just being in that space and enjoying that.
Mhm.
And at the end, when you see that track and you find the lion tribe sitting in that space,
Mhm.
wasn't that burst of happiness can be there, but it's not the end game. The end game is
Mhm.
feeling that joy at
Well,
all
and
times.
it reminds me similar to the quote that, gosh, who said it about love? That love, like, initial love is like the flame versus a deep love is the coals
Hmm.
that continue to burn, is kind of what it makes me think of too. That again, happiness isn't bad. It's that invitation to go deeper, like you were saying, into joy. Because
Hmm.
a person may feel happy. It may be they never heard about crocheting, for example. And the first time they hear about it, it's that spark, that interest, that, oh, that feels very happy. Like I am more interested in this. I'm pretty looking forward to this. So that invitation to then go deeper and start that new hobby. And who knows where that could lead with that fulfillment, but not being stuck with trying to just create that initial spark of it. It almost sounds like people try to keep that initial spark instead of appreciating the deeper part. And I wonder too if some of that deals with, it sounds like feeling joy goes back to that connection, like you were talking about before. And connection requires vulnerability, both with
Hmm.
self, even if we're not connecting with other people, just connecting with ourselves requires us to be vulnerable with ourselves, all the different parts of ourselves, all the different facets of ourselves. And
Hmm.
so, do you think sometimes for people who just go after that initial happiness, that initial spark, is because some of it is how uncomfortable it can be to go deeper into that joy because of what it requires of us?
I think you hit the nail on the head right there. I think sometimes it's vulnerable to sit in your own space with yourself, that quiet time, especially if we're set up to, we subconsciously set up an expectation. So
An unfair expectation.
an
Yeah.
unfair expectation, and that may be just pattern wise through our lineage, or this is the state of humanity right now, is like we set ourselves up for this. So it's, if maybe that's an effect of it, so we are afraid to go within, have that
Mhm.
stillness, because what are we going to get out of that? Not going to get no dopamine push, not going to get it. Going back to like what you're saying, being vulnerable, I think that
Mhm.
is a key word for so many people don't want to be vulnerable. They want to be vulnerable with themselves. They put walls up, they put
Mhm.
on I don't want to say fake exteriors, because
I
they
think
don't want
they
to see what
show
people
I think
internal.
yeah, I think they show pieces of themselves, like parts, and they'll emphasize that part or piece. I know there are people too who also they'll call it masking, that they'll mask
Mm,
themselves so they won't show themselves at all. They'll show what they feel the other person wants to see.
yeah. And that's very harmful. That can be very harmful, emotionally, for yourself and others around, if you're not truly going within and acknowledging yourself.
Well, I think that comes back to like we were talking about before in previous, like being miraculous and embracing that we're enough, is who's around us, because if we're surrounded by people, if we did show our true selves, that they would be mean
Hmm.
or, harmful or something like that, it totally makes sense to put on the mask. Like people got to do what they got to do to feel safe, to survive.
Yeah. It's almost like not even putting a, maybe I'm thinking maybe not even putting a mask on, just not showing those aspects,
Yeah,
only
which is totally
showing
fair
this.
because they gotta survive. They gotta
So
get
like,
out of that.
yeah, so it's still legit, but you don't see the other pieces. Like this is, yeah.
Yeah, when we talk about how harmful a mask could be, that's if a person is in an environment where they could fully be themselves authentically and be embraced. And sometimes we may not know we're in that environment, especially if we hadn't been in that environment before and suddenly we're in that. And so a person may need to go to someone to help guide them through that, like a counselor or a therapist or a psychologist or some professional to help them navigate, okay, is my current environment safe? Kind of like
Mhm.
going back to that mentor, like having a mentor who specializes in checking the surroundings. Well, from everything you're describing, yeah, you are safe. Or from everything you're describing, it sounds like you're surrounded by, like hippos, if they're feeling kind of punchy and wanting to like, charge or something, or surrounded by, lions who are malnourished, it's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't be there right now. So yeah, because that goes back to, even though with joy finding in ourselves, we still need that community that we feel safe enough that we can connect with them and be in that community where we feel safe enough that we can even connect with ourselves. Because I know people that if they're currently in an unsafe community, if they connect with their authentic self, it can make it difficult to stay in that community, but they don't have the means to leave it yet. Like some people, they have to move into a safe community before they're able to go internal and connect with their inner self and really figure out who they are. And that's okay too, because everybody's brain works differently. Everybody's process is different. Some people need to have the epiphany first while in a hostile community to
Yeah.
motivate them to leave it. Some people have to leave that community first and then they can go within. So whatever a person's process is, I mean, it's okay.
So I'll wrap up that little bit there that we were just talking about the joy, the difference between joy and that happiness. To just reiterate that happiness is that instant excitement,
Mhm.
but that joy is that presence, that peace of being. When you use the candle metaphor, lighting that candle, like happiness, like we're lighting that candle, but that candle will quickly burn out.
Well, it's the flame versus the coals. Like you have like if someone's doing a charcoal grill, like you have the flames, that's that happiness that it can like be, whatever it looks fleeting or something, but the hottest part is the coals. Like
Mm.
that's where the depth is of it. May not be the best metaphor, but that was what I
Yeah.
thought of when y'all were talking
Yeah.
about happiness and joy.
Yeah, so happiness is fleeting. Joy is always present. It's always there. I think this will be my last segment here. I just want to talk about how cultivating and living in living from joy.
Yes.
So this is our main goal is for all of us. So how do we cultivate that joy? How do we live from that joy? It begins again going back to that centeredness, that awareness. So as you move through the day and notice what makes you come alive. Like for me, nature, listening to music. That could be that warm cup of coffee. That could be holding, your partner's hand in silence with no expectations, just being present. That makes you feel more alive than that burst of happiness because it's ever sustaining, that joy, that underlying feeling. So I just want to say, let happiness delight you, but let joy sustain you. So the more you live in that, from that quiet center, like we were talking about, the more life begins to balance. So when we go in, we become more balanced, not because everything is perfect, but because we are present. We are present with that. So that's where joy grows from. It grows from that presence of where presence lives, basically, that innerness and just being.
I like that. Presence, connection, authenticity.
Joy is our natural state. We wouldn't think it is,
Yeah.
but it is our natural state when our mind is quiet and our hearts are open. That is our natural state. Like when we meditate, we're quiet. Our heart's open. We're quiet. We're centering. So that joy doesn't just come from meditation. We can walk in joy every moment of the day. So
I like
remember you don't have to find joy. You just have to simply allow it. Allow
that.
it. And it's that natural vibration of our soul when it's not resisting what is, when it's not resisting.
So I was thinking you can be a pack person, PAC person, pack person, present, authentic, connecting person.
I like it. It's a packed crowd. It's a packed crowd tonight.
I'm packing joy.
Yep, I'm packing joy tonight. Watch out, there'll be fireworks of happiness, but it'll land on a bed of joy. Yeah, so I just from personal experience, please allow yourself the time to go within. And if you're not feeling that joy and just being present in your everyday and just those little things, it's like being present, really work on that because it is life altering. I am totally different than I was 2 years ago because for so many years, I thought it was just a 3-letter word. Now I put, I put action, I put action into it. And that action is stillness and just being okay with how everything is without an outcome of expectations. Yeah. So
Like
that's it.
that.
That's all I have for today.
Thank you so much for bringing up this topic. It's awesome to explore joy versus happiness and And it's really interesting, kind of like we were talking about before. For me, it was, I didn't call it joy, I called it fulfillment.
Mm.
That years ago, that was my goal, was to build a more fulfilling life. And I can see what you're talking about, that whether it's the same thing, you know what I mean? Like whether joy and fulfillment are the same, just different ways to say it, or whether fulfillment invites joy and joy invites fulfillment. But I could see where it did bring, I felt more joy in my life. The more that I felt brought fulfillment into my life. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing all this. This is a good topic.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. So thank y'all so much for tuning in to Sacred Axis, a space for the whimsically divine.